John Boyega, it is so good to meet you, man. Somebody who is as passionate and effective at speaking truth to power in real life as he is in film. And we see that in full display in Red, White, and Blue as part of Steve McQueen's Small Acts Anthology. Wonderful piece. What made you say yes to this project?
I mean, you said it right. Steve McQueen, that was the first thing that made me say yes. I was at a crossroads. Obviously, I'd been doing the franchise for so long, and after everything finishing, I was kind of like, okay, what do I do next? And in considering that, Steve McQueen calling up my agent saying he wanted to have lunch in central London to discuss a role, I was just like, this is who I need to be working with. When I knew he was doing Red, White, and Blue, I was like, all right, I'm down to do it.
When you're thinking about exploring range and thinking about the versatility of this character, what does it take for John Boyega to put on a police uniform? Because you've got this character that makes this difficult decision to join the police force against his dad's wishes. How do you go through that? Are you thinking about personal experiences, or are you putting yourself personally in the mind of Leroy Logan?
I'm more of a submissive kind of actor in a sense that I give the role domination, and you know I have a vessel type approach in which the role dominates all, especially if you're playing someone who's still alive, and Leroy Logan is still about, he's still very much a community man, still a part of the many pieces of the jigsaw puzzle in terms of instigating change. So I'm like, you know, I have to show OG some respect and know what he went through, understand his mind, you know, because certain scenes are so intricate. Steve McQueen's projects are essentially character study sometimes. I let the role determine how I should feel it first, before going into the pot of personal experience. Let's use personal experience as like a retainer account. You know, like when things get a bit too intense, then I'll lock into me, you know.
What I loved a lot about this piece too is that you see the maturation of this character, because it starts off with him as a child. And it kind of formed this idea that people don't become who they are by osmosis. It's their experiences that inform how they think. Yeah, and how they move.
A combination of various, it's a melting pot.
Yeah. Why'd you think it was so important and powerful for this to open up with him as a child?
It showed the way in which this kid identified these officers, and for me, made his decision to join them even way more profound. Especially joining them after what your father has been saying all this time about them has proven true in terms of two police officers now beating him up, and you know, reducing him down to a slave in a sense there, but you know, by treating him in that way. The various pieces of who this guy is, I think that's a part of his motivation. He doesn't want another well put together, well educated kid with a trumpet or whatever in his hand to be stopped and searched. You know, he wants there to be a fairness, and I think that it was important. Those moments in his young life, it was important to show that, because that shows how long this obstacle has been around, that even in his childhood, he faced the same obstacles until he had to grow up to become a man and join that same institution to try and, you know, motivate some kind of change.
You know, it's so funny. I can't help but see the parallels between the character you play and who I see of John Boyega in real life. You know, your character fights back against the racism he's experiencing at work in the police force. And I see a parallel of what you're doing in Hollywood, being honest about your experiences with racism, with discrimination within this industry. Specifically, that speech you gave at that BLM rally in Hyde Park, where you spoke truth to power and said, this could damage my career, but I don't care right now. But you spoke anyway. What made you speak anyway?
My best friend, her aunties, her mum, people that have taken me in, all live out in the States. People who have like helped me on my journey, given me places to stay, all live out there, are all vulnerable to these kind of challenges. Most of my family, my blood family, are in Nigeria. I'm a dual citizen and are there in Lagos, in Ibadan, in these areas where things are going down. It is, you know, speaking truth to power, but at the same time, it's a cry for help in a sense. It's a cry for help. Like it's like a chorus of trying to just get people aware of a certain type of pain, you know, because we, as much as I'm in this position, I still have people that, you know, are still in my life. You know, I love with my whole heart. So regardless of it being like, you know, I don't care. I have to speak about something that is just so important to me, because even if I had my success, and let's say those people become victims to the challenges that they're facing in the States here and in other places, parts of the world, how would I then feel being in my position that I never said anything, I never did anything? So it's like, it's a part of me just trying to do the little that we can do in this position.
You know, my heart is with you and your family in Nigeria with the NSARS movement that's happening right now. And it comes together to make me think about how important it is for every member of the Black diaspora to stand in solidarity when these things happen. Why do you think it's important for folks all over the world of color to stand together in moments like this?
It's super important. My journey specifically, I just thank God for my path, because obviously I'm here from the UK, and then to expand my career, I had to travel over to the States. When I went out to the States, I actually lost my Airbnb accommodation at the time and ended up meeting who is now my best friend at a party. And she was like, yo, you can come and stay at mine, and I will take you to auditions from my place. And her place was in Inglewood. So rather than staying in West Hollywood, I was staying in Inglewood for a good couple of months with my friend. We met her family, went up to all the parties together, in sharing my experiences as a Black British guy, and those guys sharing their experiences. There was that exchange. And then I flew out, I've been traveling over to Nigeria. My young cousins, brothers, friends there. I've worked in Nigeria for a good couple of months, So in going out there and meeting people there, in my experience, we are very similar. We are very, very similar in terms of that global experience. I know we all have our unique lineage, which we respect and love, but our similarities are so special. We can still get together and know that we are part of one global Black community.
I can't help but hear this echo as you're speaking now from the film, when your aunt says, yo, you have to leverage your talents for something bigger than yourself. You're not meant to just sit in a lab with a lab coat. Do you feel like your platform lends itself to that same advice?
Yeah, it's like much like in the protest. One of my biggest emphasis was family. One of my biggest emphasis was Black men, leadership in the family, the way in which we raise our children, the kind of care, love, and attention we give them, having a more educated view on how we approach all of this. And for me, given Red, White, and Blue and the influences behind that, of course, many of this dialogue was inspired by very intricate, detailed conversations with Steve, conversations that have you in tears, conversations have you hugging. I didn't even know you experienced that, Steve, I don't even know you experienced that. Various lines that were put in there were based on conversations that happened prior to shooting. Then Steve said, what was that? He goes, put that in. You say that. That's what we mean. So it's like, having that approach, your life will inform in some ways, and these conversations inform the character as well.
Well, before I let you go, I've got to ask about another line in the script that had me dying laughing. When you and your best mate, I think it's your cousin, you call him your best friend in there. He says, you're thinking of joining the Force? What, you want to become a Jedi or something?
Yeah.
Did you know that line was going to be in there? How did that
I did. And I still don't understand my reaction until today, guys. I wish I could tell you, but I've just, the only thing I thought to myself was, am I supposed to have a problem with this? Like, is there supposed to be is a professional actor supposed to say, oh, Steve, this feels a bit heads-on with this? But I just was like, come on, man, have fun in it, whatever,
Right. Did you ever think that Star Wars would be a film that would continue to follow you in this way?
Yeah, no, I love it. When it's used in this way, I think it's cool, because I actually grown up watching other actors have those moments, and I'm like, yeah, man, that's cool to have that.